Welcome to another episode of Poker Distilled. Melissa, you were just talking about that variance video that dropped on YouTube a couple of weeks ago, where I got the prime dope variance calculator graphs up and was kind of showing everyone the depressing pits of despair that is poker variance. And, you know, you were talking about like the live players that were coming on there and saying, well, I can have a 36 BB per 100 win rate. And I just wanted to, I was about to rant this to you, and I thought, no, let's switch on the recording. I've had enough of this. I'm like done with this. I'm so mad at golf right now. Golf's fucked me about for the last goddamn time, and I'm going to quit the fucking sport. But before that happens, let me unleash this anger. So
let's do it.
Live players, right, in live games, like let's say that you are winning at 32 BB per 100.
Just before we'll just say for the listeners, this is a video that you made.
Yeah.
It came out through Carrot Corner. It's on YouTube. You can watch it now if you haven't seen it. Anyways, just so people get that.
Yeah, it's called Poker Variance is way bigger than you think, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's our video, and people in the comments were saying actually you can have a 32 BB per 100 win rate live and stuff like that. And I just want to stress something. You don't play the stakes you think you play when you play live. Like when you go around telling people that you play 1-2 live, that's a fucking lie. You don't play 1-2. You play like 4-8 or something like that. And I'll tell you why. One, people raise to like $12 pre-flop in a 1-2 game because it's like some kind of blind leading blind moronic, like strange ecosystem where because everyone's so bad, everyone thinks that they have to make it $12 to get heads up, as if that's like the goal. I don't even think you should make it $12 pre. You should just be like, okay, I got 4 callers and I have ace king. This is going to go really well for me in a lot of ways. People suck in multi-way pots, blah, blah, blah. But people are making it 10. People are making it 12. People are ISOing to like $26 when someone limps and shit like this. Squeezes are like 30 big blinds. 4 bets are 4,800 big blinds. 5 bets are castles that people have built, you know, just selling their property as 5 bets. You know, it's ridiculous. And so like with all of this straddle and bulbous sizing and inflated pots and all of that, and multi-way pots that get really big really fast, you don't actually play 1-2. Like, you don't play the equivalent of an online 1-2 game. You actually play something like 3-6 or 4-8 or something like that, probably. So when people say that they have a 32 BB per 100 win rate, what they probably mean is that they have an 8 BB per 100 win rate in a 4-8 game instead of a 32 BB per 100 win rate in what they're calling a 1-2 game. So that's my kind of antidote to that. That's like my explanation for just how much bigger like live win rates can appear than online win rates. The game is bigger. The game is different. It's not the same thing.
Yeah. And you're also not you have to factor in straddles too. Those are very common. A typical straddle in a 1-2 game is 5. So it's like 1-2-5.
Yep. So already it's bigger than a 2-5 game.
Yeah.
And everyone's deep as well. So it's not like
everyone's super deep.
Everyone's got $200 and then suddenly everyone's at 40 big blinds because it's a $5 straddle. No, people are here with like 1,000. You're at like 500 big blinds for the 1-2 game because it's not a 1-2 game, right? So I think live players just need to accept that they're not really playing 1-2 in the same sense that they are online if they want to understand variance and win rates and swings, because I've had live players say in response to that video, actually my swings are terrible. I swung 15k in a 1-2 game. It's like, no, you swung 15k in a 4-8 game because that's how it's played.
Yeah, that's about what I've gone through twice in this year. So over the last year of playing, I've gone through 2 swings, not 15k, but between like 8 and 10. And it's like, that is hard. It's hard because they're in the back of your mind, you're like, this is a 1-2 game. Like, what the hell is going on here? But you're right. You're absolutely right with the straddles. And then also there's bomb pots. So the club I play at, there's every orbit, there's 1 bomb pot, dealer's choice. And it's like, usually it's just everyone antes up 5. Sometimes they ante up 10. That's become less of a thing now because like less and less people do it. Anteing up $10 in a bomb pot is just like in a 1-2 game is insane. But the $5 ante in itself is a lot. And then, bomb pots are like, my approach is basically like, I tend to play them pretty conservatively, and I justify that by the fact that when I win them, the return is enormous.
Yep.
So like I had a bomb pot last night where I flopped quads, and the I had three other people in the pot just betting out, and I'm just calling into the river and jamming. And I ended up scooping both. It was a two board bomb pot. I ended up scooping both pots, and it was like an enormous pot. It was like 5 times what a pot would be in that game regularly. And so like that's how I justify playing bomb pots, because they can, when things are going bad, when things are going poorly and you're not winning, regular hands, and then you're getting whacked on bomb pots, it can feel like, what am I doing? I'm just like burning money here. Because you want to be able to play an arena that you're more familiar with, which is obviously just like the regular 1-2 game. But anyways, that's how I justify them. But getting back to the variance, I think that's totally true. And your video, I thought, like if I was an online player, all that information is available to me. I could figure out my win rate. I could determine like the standard deviation. Like even like a standard deviation on prime dope is like 80, right? Isn't that for like live full ring, I think?
It depends on the game. I mean, because standard deviation is measured in big blinds per 100, again, we have this like absurdly silly situation where you're not playing that many big blinds that the dollar on the chip says that you are. So
yeah,
if you want to say that it's 80, well, if that game actually plays 2 or 3 times the size that you're pretending it is, then in the currency of $2 BB per 100s, then it's way more than that. So yeah, but if you are actually converting first, if you're saying, okay, my game actually plays like 2.5, so I'm going to stop calling it 1.2, and then you're looking at $5 BB per 100 standard deviation, then you're probably looking at like 70. You're probably looking at less than 80 for sure.
Yeah, that's what I used when I used prime dope to figure out my variance calculations. Like I had to basically do some kind of math to figure out, okay, what game am I actually playing? Because it's not 1-2. I'm not going to use $2 as a big blind. So anyways, for all of those live players out there who are listening, who are grinding out, low stakes, mid stakes, I just would say take heart with, like, your variance is probably going to be wider than you expect. And for that reason, and I think all the live players can immediately relate to what I'm saying. I mean, like a perfect example is like last night, I'm in the small blind with kings. The under the gun opens, folds to button raises to 80. And I'm looking at kings, and I'm just like, okay, like, and this guy's super tight and da. And for a number of different reasons, I was like, I just think this is aces. So I just flatted. I wasn't sure, but I was like, there's a good chance that this, 4-bet would be inappropriate here. The pot's already so big. And, I called with kings, and I hit a king came on the flop, and all the money went in, and I was fortunate in that pot, and he did have aces. But again, it's like someone's opening under the gun to 15, and then a 3-bet to 85 is ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. But that's what that's what happens. So
I wonder if you just need to like fold pre.
I could. And there was another player in my game last night who is a pretty solid player, and actually like in my opinion, like a very solid, like low stakes player, and like a winning player, like knows how to play. And he actually folded kings in a similar situation because the 3-better was raised so big. And I don't know. I don't know. I couldn't arrive on it. I don't know. I didn't think it was right to fold kings there.
I mean, maybe it's usually not. I mean, it depends on the person. I'm just making the point that, like, if you're calling and then probably putting in, it depends how deep you are. Like, maybe calling and try to figure out more info and set mine a little bit.
400 big. It was 300 bigs.
300 $2 bigs. Deep. Yeah. So you're like 600. Yeah. I mean, it's not ideal. But yeah, I mean, I just want to point out that for anyone that's like playing online and hasn't played live in games like this, there are OMCs, Old Men Coffees, out there that literally only have aces when they call 3-bet to 80. So when you wake up with kings behind, it can be like a really, really terrible spot for kings compared to what we'd be used to in the online climate. Because I think an online person listening to this just thinks we're insane right now for saying something like that. Oh
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
It can happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so live poker is a whole fun and games like rigmarole of sitting around doing nothing for a long time and suddenly gambling for like loads of money in some spot where pots are like massively inflated. So I for one love the I like the smooth tempo. I've been playing a bit more cash, as you know, Melissa, and I like the smooth
Yeah.
tempo of playing a Zoom game online and having my
Yeah.
4 tables up, and I fold here, I
Yeah.
raise here, I see bet here, I raise here, I
Yeah.
fold here, I call there, oh, I won, I lost, oh, I won a stack, nice. And it just goes on like that, and it feels
Yeah.
kind of, although there's a lot of variance in that format too, it
Sure.
still
Sure.
feels kind of smooth and like normal, and
It's
I'm not
pure.
having to switch modes
Yeah.
all the time. I think my main gripe with live is like having to go from absolutely nothing happening to something stupidly absurd happening in some silly pot with a
Yeah.
massive fucking inflation of chips, and
Yeah.
I just can't. I'm just not interested in that. But I feel like
Yeah.
hating on things right now, so I'm going to just hate on live poker for a bit for the fun
That's
of it.
okay.
Yeah.
That's nothing new. Nothing
No.
new. We all know that you hate on live poker a lot. I feel like there's a real balance to it. Like, watching the cash games that you've played online, that you've streamed, and I've watched enough online cash to like, it's so smooth, it's so pure, it's so technical, it's like watching a kind of it's like watching like a piece of music or something. It's like every instrument does its part and functions in a certain way, and then when an instrument plays out of tune, it's very obvious, right? And like everyone knows it, and people react accordingly. Live poker is like a punk band where like nobody knows how to play their instruments.
I think it's worse.
It's like,
I'd say it's like a bunch of
worse.
cats like walking across a guitar that's on the ground.
Right. Yeah, because punk music is good music. But yeah, I think it's just maybe like not the best metaphor, but I think that there's a real balance in live that you can achieve that is extremely satisfying if you can get the right balance of theoretically, understanding where you are theoretically understanding what the proper, move is or action is, and then deviating appropriately. That in itself is a real art and a real balance, and is quite satisfying when it's done well. I had a really good session last night where I was able to do that, and I think that that in itself I find totally worth it. And then plus, if you have the right cards and you run well, then yeah, you're winning a lot. And that's also a nice piece of it as well. So but I liked otherwise I liked your video. I think Prime Dope is a really good tool to use,
An underused one as well.
Yeah, it's really helpful. It's helpful to kind of, and it gives you like, you only looked at one part of the website, but like there's other parts of it that like give you like a whole more information about like what 2 or 3 years can look like in various, like you just looked at the graph, right? That there's like another part that gives you more information, but yeah, everyone should use it.
Yep.
Anyways, yeah, you want to talk about loneliness in poker?
Yeah. So today's topic is kind of how much of an individual pursuit poker can feel like. But first, before I get into this, I have to share a little bit of comic relief, a story that just happened to me this afternoon. It won't take very long. I came home there. I was hitting some balls at the driving range badly, and I came home, and we have 2 doors. So we have like a door, a normal door, and then we have like a see-through glass and wood door, and I could see into the kitchen, but I had to still unlock like the inner door. And I looked into the kitchen, and our youngest cat, who's kind of still a kitten, had a dog food tin over his head to the point where his head had become a dog food tin, and he was just like walking into the skirting board and just like aimlessly staggering about. And I was like, holy shit, how long has this guy had a dog food tin for a head, and is he like okay? And I ran over, and it was really stuck on like quite tight, and I had to like severely it was like the seal of the tin,
it's like a cartoon.
Yeah, no, it was unbelievably cartoonish. It like formed the seal like around his neck so that his head was literally engulfed in this tin. I don't know how well he could breathe in there, so like I don't even know like if I hadn't come home like in that moment what would have happened. But I managed to like get it off with a pop as the air seal broke. And then he was just like staggering around, had food all over had like the remnants of the dog food because he'd been in the bin, and he'd like obviously like shoved his head into this thing and then come out the bin again with it as a new head. And he came out and he was covered in dog food, and I was like, oh my god, are you okay? And I like held him up to me, and he was just like, bah! Like, give me food. He's just such an unreal little weirdo. He just wanted fed, so put a biscuit down to see if he was all right. That's the litmus test. And he just went, no, ate the biscuit. And like, I didn't get a picture of it, and it's just like one of those moments where if you'd caught that on camera, And
Mm-hmm.
it didn't. If you wanted like the greatest like clips ever for like, it'd
Yeah.
be viral, I'm pretty sure.
It
It's like
would be super yeah, it would be really viral. Yeah.
But I didn't even get it on camera because I ran over. I didn't want. I just wanted to save him. I didn't want to like. I didn't think to record it or even take a picture. I wish I had.
That's okay though. I think that's okay.
Yeah,
I don't think everything should be recorded.
yeah, but I could be a millionaire from the kitten clip and would never have to talk about poker again.
Yeah, but then you'd have to but then you'd have to pay the kitten, his 20%.
Yeah, sure,
Um,
sure.
just standard pet rate when they're used in videos.
Yeah.
Um,
So poker can feel a bit like that, like you are just in the dark and you have a dog food tin over your head and you know no one is there to help you, right? Like poker can feel a bit like that.
yeah, yeah. It's funny because uh there was a book that came out in the 70s that I remember my dad had it because my dad was like a runner, like he
Mm,
was like a long distance runner. And in the 1970s when there was like the whole running boom,
mm,
at least in the United States, I think it was worldwide, but when it became like really popular, there's a book that came out called The Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner.
mm,
And it was about how like training for like a marathon or some long race is an exceedingly lonely task because it's up to you to go out and run every day and you're by yourself for multiple miles. This is before headphones and iPads and stuff,
mm,
or iPads. I mean, before any kind of like technology that allows you to run with music
mhm,
or podcasts. Anyways, I think poker is like that, even though there is a element of community. If you're someone that has a study group, or like if you're part of a Discord, like we are, and all of that, I think ultimately it's kind of up to you how you play, and your journey is your journey and no one else's.
mm,
And you're sometimes I think like because of that, the various mental ups and downs that you go through um, can feel a lot worse or a lot more extreme
mhm.
because of that. And you can feel disconnected from other people. You can feel disconnected from the world, the regular world, and feel foolish for like pursuing it sometimes, I think, at its most extreme when things are going poorly.
Yeah.
So I thought it'd be kind of interesting to kind of talk about that. And I think maybe people listening can relate to that feeling.
Yeah, for sure. I guess I've kind of sidestepped that because for most of my poker life, I've always had some kind of community or way of sharing poker.
Yeah.
Whether that be streaming or making videos or talking about it with friends, I've just always had constant socialization in the poker world as part of a job or of, just hanging out with people. And I think that to some extent has kept me totally safe from that loneliness that can encircle you. But I have taught a lot of students who, for example, might have never spoken to anyone else about poker. Like they've literally taken it up.
Mm,
They don't know anybody. They watch videos, they join training sites, they do courses. That's their study. They get a solver, they go through GTO Wizard, and then they play and they play and they play, and they don't even have a single poker friend. And that is so unhealthy. It's not how humans learn. And my first thing I say to people like that is, you really need to start like socializing over poker. Like this isn't like some mad scientist that can just sit and experiment in like in his lab in a basement and like figure everything out until he's managed to, I don't know, clone rats or whatever. Like this is a game where when you're figuring it out, it's such a human game, and it's so much about what other humans are doing and thinking, that the more integrated you can get yourself within the world of poker and the more you can hear how other people think about the game, the better you are exploitatively. And that's why I'm finding it, like as I'm playing poker right now and I'm turning back on my exploitative dials and I'm kind of using all the hand reading skills and everything I know about humans and how they think, I feel like I'm just really, really in touch with like how humans are playing in this kind of
hmm
borderline intuitive, like comes across almost psychic level, where I just get a sense of what they're doing and thinking and how their ranges look in certain spots and what to do about that. And that's a nice feeling. But a lot of that doesn't just come from playing and seeing lots of showdowns. I think rather it comes from hearing people talk about the game. And, having coached hundreds and hundreds of people over the last decade, I must have coached like somewhere between 500 and 1,000 poker players over the last decade. I don't know exactly how many,
Wow.
but enough of them, and this is multiple sessions with each one as well, some cases 20, 30 sessions or something in the long-term cases. So I think all of that just hearing people give their thought process as part of a coaching session has enabled me not just to like socialize in this job and, you know, make something that's a bit less lonely out of it, but also to become a better player. So I would put it to you that not only should we try and survive in a community in poker, not only should we try and form bonds and stuff like that and discuss hands with people so that we feel less alone and so we learn better, because humans learn better in groups, but we should also do that so that we may subconsciously ingest as much human poker brain stuff as possible, so that we can just get a sense of what our opponents are doing and feeling and thinking, and what their ranges look like and how they're going to react to different things in different nodes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that understanding that human element is what makes, I think it, just to kind of maybe push back a little bit on that, it's like that in itself can sometimes generate loneliness, because if you feel like, okay, like I have my exploitative dials kind of tuned correctly and this is how humans play like a certain range or whatever, and then you're finding out like you're wrong in a certain spot, or something's happening that's you didn't expect to happen, or you know, you're surprised. And I'm not sure how much this happens to you, just because you're you know, a much more advanced player than I am, and you know, you have more experience and all of that, and obviously the online world is different. But I'm not constantly, but I'm very often in situations where I'm making what I feel is like an exploitative move that turns out to be incorrect, or doesn't go exactly like I had anticipated.
But that's just poker, right? Like there's lots of variance. So when you have that's not a problem of being wrong. That's a problem of having the wrong level of specificity. So if I say, I feel this is a overfolded spot, and if I raise the river, it's going to make money on average, like with this bluff hand, because their range is a bit too weak in Captain Mars for the sizing, and they're not going to bluff catch enough of the top pair combos. Let's say I have a thought process like that in some spot, and then I raise and a guy snap calls me. If I start questioning my overall read based on that one bit of feedback, or even that happening a couple of times in a week or something like that, I'm never going to have a concrete thought process. I'm never actually going to be able to validate or ingrain anything as a valid strategy or opinion of the population, because what's going to happen is I'm going to be blown about like a leaf in the wind of variance. So as long as your reads are, this is slightly winning over 1,000 trials, this will work 450 times, even though it only needs to work 400 times. Like if that's my read, that something works, you know, 5% more often than it needs to, then I've got a profitable long-term play, but I'm going to lose a hell of a lot of stacks like in the process of that. And I don't think that it's a case of being surprised. Like maybe the danger to that is that if you're too set in your ways and you refuse to take long-term feedback that something isn't working as feedback, then yes, you will never improve. But I guess I get my feedback just in a different way from results. Like I tend to not derive much feedback at all from results, and it's very rare that my read is going to be, I know exactly what you have and what you're going to do. If I like put my read on a pedestal of that level of specificity, then yes, you could say that when I'm shown a different hand to that, I was wrong and I need to go away and look at that. But as long as my read is, this is a severely overfolded spot, I can still have you, I don't know, say I'm betting pot and I need 50% folds, I can still have you call 30% of the time, and that's going to take my stack and it's going to hurt me. Yeah, I can be absolutely right that I'm printing by bluffing that spot, you know? So I'd just be careful with that kind of, am I right, am I wrong? Like live players throw around this term, oh, I called the river and I was right, I called the river and I was wrong. I was like, okay, that's interesting. Did you decide what your opponent's hand was? No, you actually just put them on a range and you ran into the bad part of that range. Then in what sense were you wrong? Like, okay, you lost the pot, but the word wrong there, I believe, is a bit of a, I don't know, it's a bit iffy and it causes problems. It's another one of these terms I'd eliminate.
Totally correct. I think you're right. I think that what I was getting at is in that being in that 30%, arriving at that 30% of hands, or that 30% of their range multiple times in a row. And then being in a live setting where it's slower. You're not seeing, you know, you're seeing 30 hands an hour if you're lucky, probably less than that with bomb pots. And so you're, you know, like a combination of being card dead and then running into that part of the range that beats you. And even though you say to yourself, over 1,000 hands, this is winning, that, and I say this to myself a lot, and I encounter this a lot, it still is an incredibly difficult. It's difficult to kind of be in that position again and again.
Yep.
And so the sense of, well, I'm hanging on to this understanding I have that, I need 50% fold equity here, and I'm way good because they're only calling 30% of the time. That's fine in theory, but it's lonely to live in that world if it happens again. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm getting at, is that it's a feeling of having to rely on a kind of, I guess what I'm saying is it takes a kind of courage, because you need to trust, not just trust, but you need to understand what you're doing, and you need to have the courage to continue to do it. And you also need to have the courage to not, to be able to continue to play well, to access your A game, or something as close to your A game as possible, moving forward. So that's just kind of what I'm getting at, is that it's isolating to be in that world where, and I'm trying to think of something to compare it to that's not poker, like some other profession where I guess it's like very similar to maybe like trading stocks or something, or trying to kind of to work in a profession where you're hedging in a certain way to based on a certain outcome over a long sample, over a wide sample. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I think it is really analogous to the stock market, in the sense that I don't know a lot about the stock market, and
neither do
all of the investing I do is just like someone does it for me, and they play big global indexes and shit, and I don't like play the market. I don't get in and out of it at any time. I have no experience with crypto or anything like that, so for anyone listening, this might be like a layman's take on it, but I get the sense that if you are going to be good at playing the market, you definitely need to commit to a strategy that you have thoroughly researched, that you have reason to believe will work independently to the outcome that's currently going on. And I think like bad investors, as far as I know, are the ones who basically go with the crowd and panic every time something drops, and just act really impulsively and predictably in every moment. Like doing that's like kind of a guaranteed way to be like a whale in the market, right? And I think poker's the same way, in that if your coach, for example, has taught you that, let's pick like a really good fold equity spot, right? Like if they check the turn to you when you're the c-better on the flop, but you decide not to c-bet, right? So you miss your c-bet and you check back, and then they check the turn to you. That spot is insanely overfolded in almost all games. Like there are almost no games in the world where that range that checks to you a second time is like massively overprotected, or even significantly so. So if you had a strategy of just bluffing hands that were slightly outside of a bluffing range normally, or maybe just always bluffing hands that were like low frequency or mid frequency bluffs, and that became your strategy, and then a few times in a row you got check raised in that spot, to then go off and be like, I don't like delayed c-betting the turn because I get check raised, is horrible, because delayed c-betting the turn is insanely winning like over the long term. It's a really good thing to do with air. You can go thinner for value than theory says you can, based on their range being capped, and you should absolutely keep doing that. So in poker, it's not that you don't need some way of validating things. I brought the example of the coach up there because like getting coaching is just one very pure way to, if you have the right coach, to sort of validate your strategies and make sure that you're on the right page. And that way you can sort of sit back and say, no, I trust this guy or trust this girl. I know that if I do what they say, it's going to probably work out because I've seen them coaching other people to success and blah, blah, blah. And it gives you a rock. Or even if it's not a coach and it's a community, and you say, okay, X has been going wrong recently. Like every time I've called the river in this spot that I'm told is overbluffed, they seem to have had it. Let me post this hand. Was this call okay? Oh yeah, that call's totally winning. Like that call's fine. Don't worry about it. But you know what? You need 25% equity because they've bet half pot, and you're probably only going to win like 40% of the time, but it's still massively winning because you're getting 15% more equity than you actually need. But yeah, that's going to be a lot of like back-to-back loss streaks are going to happen within that, and then you get that reassurance. Or it could be, oh no, you've totally misapplied that. That's a really losing call because you've missed the fact that villain's range contracted earlier by calling your pot size bet. So this is not at all the same spot as that other river spot where it checked all the way to the river and you called the half pot there. So when all the draws complete and villain filtered by calling a pot size bet earlier, then it's no longer overbluffed in most runouts, right? So then you're going to have to like fold there with a similar strength of hand. And maybe the student in poker needs to learn via community by making sure that they're on the right page when they're running bad and getting that bad feedback, and sometimes learning that they're on the wrong page, but not learning that through the feedback of the variance
Right.
itself and the results, because that's not the
Right.
feedback you can depend on. And then without this bastion, without this like lighthouse of community, without this sort of rock to cling onto in the middle of a choppy ocean, where are you going to get your feedback from? Aren't you just literally going to, by definition, just be some kind of log getting like, thrown around in the ocean, just getting like landing on all the
Yeah.
waves and having no say about where you go? Surely that's just your destiny if you don't have community in poker.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I can't imagine it. But a lot of people do it.
Yeah, or they use the
But
solver, right? They're like, oh, the solver is
yeah,
my bastion and that's my lighthouse, and there's equally problems there too.
right, right. But I mean, I know like a lot of live players that don't even do that, that their feedback is what other players are doing,
Mm-hmm.
which leads to the opening to $12 in a 1-2 game or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
or like, raising to 25 bigs or 3-betting to 25 bigs. So no, I think that you're in a world where people are in live poker, you're in a world where people are playing based on terrible feedback and terrible patterns. And so you have that rock in the choppy sea, and that's kind of where you reside.
Mm.
And everyone else around you is just like floating down the stream, drowning or whatever. I don't know. But it is an interesting kind of alienating feeling
Mm.
sometimes, because you're like, I mean, I sometimes have this feeling where I'm just like, this is just terrible. Like, this is just terrible poker, like all
Mm.
around me.
Mm-hmm.
And and a lot of times, like, you're watching the same players run well over a long period of time. And you could see how it creates in their mind this idea of them, like they're playing terribly, but they're getting lucky and they're running well. And so they're winning. And it creates this feedback loop to where they are repeating the same actions over and over and over again, and expecting the same result. And then when the variance switches, and they run bad, then you never see them again.
Mm-hmm.
That is the path of so many people through a poker club. That is like the narrative. And I'm sure there's people listening who can relate. Like, you see these people show up in your live poker room,
Mm.
and they run well for 2-3 weeks, maybe longer.
Yep.
Maybe they run well for 6 months, and then they run bad and you never see them again.
Yep.
And I think that is the poker story for a lot of people. And maybe they come back and they play again, sporadically, and they say, oh, they'll show up and they'll be like, yeah, I don't play that often anymore or whatever. But they never really commit themselves to it, because they went through that first round of variance and it wiped them out because they had no rock to hold on to, I think.
Yep.
And they also didn't really want one either.
Yeah. They're not wanting one is a really key thing. I think that happens online as well, where like people underestimate like how big a sample it can take to have a reliable observed, before true win rate and observed win rate converge. And there's definitely players that come and go from the online scene that are losing players that win it, 5 big blinds for 100 over 80,000 hands, and they think they've got it absolutely nailed, and then they lose at 10 BB per 100 over the next 40,000 hands, and
Yeah.
most of their profits are gone, and they're reaching out to me and being like, oh, I was a winning player and then my game fell apart. And sometimes my response to that was, you were probably not
You
a
were
winning
never.
player,
Yeah.
you were just some kind of break-even reg. And when you're a break-even reg in a high volatility game like Six Max Zoom or whatever, there's going to be so many swings. Like it's going to
Yeah.
be, there'll be 30 buy-in upswings and there'll be 30 buy-in downswings, even though you're break-even. But when you're on one of those upswings or downswings, it will feel very much like you are now a loser or you are now a winner.
Yeah.
But really, you've been the same player. Maybe you're playing worse when you're running bad and playing a bit better when you're running well. So there's a correlation for cause thing involved, wrapped up in that as well, that further feeds the delusion. But overall, yeah, you could just be a break-even player that goes through these giant peaks and troughs. That's the way poker is.
Yeah. And you don't know, like, this is another live thing where it's like you see the same players pretty much every day. The pool of players is going to be small, and like you may see that one player win like over and over again, and in your mind it creates this kind of like feedback of like, oh, that player is either, maybe they're running well, or maybe you think, oh, they're they're a good player or they're surviving or whatever, and you
Yep.
have no idea what's really going on, and you have no idea what you're really seeing, and like, or how much they've lost before they've won. And
Yep.
so that's the other part that's really disorienting sometimes, and why you just have to, I mean, for me personally, at least, I have to constantly talk myself out of this, like, this instinct I have to compare myself to others, or to generate self-criticism or self-analysis based on what I'm seeing around me
Mm.
that has nothing to do with me. I mean, I can watch how other people play hands, and I can get, a very good understanding of the type of player they are, the level of player they are. But beyond that, like, there's so much I don't know. And I think that that's something, like, you really have to just compare yourself to the player you were yesterday, and really nothing else. Like, that's kind of how I look at it. It's like, have I improved compared to how I was playing, yesterday or last week?
Mhm.
Really is like the best indicator of any kind of progress. It's the only reliable indicator of progress.
Yeah, and I think like the being able to bounce ideas back and forth with similarly minded people is both a blessing
Yes.
and a
Yeah.
curse, because it's a blessing if you find someone that is of a similar level to you or slightly more advanced than you or whatever, to whom the things you say resonate, and like it generates ideas, and it's like a lively discussion that goes back and forth, and it's kind of like a bunch of sparks all flying in a direction, igniting the same like flame of knowledge or something. That's just super goofy metaphor, but you imagine like every thought you have with this person is like you're under the same wavelength, and so like as you have more and more thoughts, you sort of solve stuff together, and this whole like communal
Mhm.
learning project of the human is that we do figure things out in like a tribal way a lot of the time, each person in the tribe having a slightly different role, but the tribe as a whole moving forward through through the ages and becoming more and more advanced. And I think poker players are like that too. The problem is that if you think back to like the Stone Ages and the Dark Ages, how much groupthink actually stalled human progression. Like sometimes it takes the people on the fringes, it takes like the Galileo or the Isaac Newton
Mhm.
or the Einstein to sort of say, no, hold on a minute, what if time is just a dimension like space, and what if we we move through it, and all of like however the hell general relativity works, and come like when he came up with that for the first time, like everyone probably thought this is ridiculously counterintuitive. There's no way this can be true, and so he had to go away and prove it
Yeah.
with like a ton of mathematical equations or whatnot. So sometimes in poker that's true as well. And if you think about like the sense in which groupthink can be a curse, it really would be like the live setting where a guy's like, oh yeah, I had to bet big to price out the draw. Oh yeah, you
Yeah.
probably got him off a flush draw, well played, or something like that. It's like that classic interaction. There's so much like nurturing of neural connections going on
Yeah.
there, but it's the wrong neural connections, just in the same way that like some tribe back in the Stone Age believed that a huge dragon goat would descend from the mountains if they didn't like lay out all of their food and make an offering for
Yeah.
a week, and they probably wasted a shit ton of their hoard that they didn't need to waste, and a bunch of them perished and starvation hit the valley, and all this sort of thing went wrong. And if someone had just said, actually, that goat demon dragon doesn't exist, you morons, and here's the proof, they'd have saved a hell of a lot more food and maybe been more nourished and discovered more stuff sooner and had a better life, and been a more successful tribe and maybe not died out, in the end. So yeah, how did I get onto that? So basically, we can have a really healthy kind of human to human interaction when we're working with a peer in a curious, open, explorative way,
Yeah.
and then we can just have a sort of inwardly selfish, mutually beneficial, I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine, ego inflating, validating sort of tandem validation service where you and I
Mhm.
sit here and I say, well, I had to get that guy off of a draw because he's sticky, so I had to
Mhm.
bet pot with my second pair. And you say, yeah, good job, you protected your hand. Then we both feel
Mhm.
better because you think of the times when you did that, and now you've got clarity and closure that what you're doing is good. But it's not, it's
Right.
terrible. It's laying a sacrifice to the
Right.
demon dragon. It's the same thing. So,
Yeah.
like, how do we know when we have the right poker community and when we're working towards genuine progress, like a bunch of explorative scientists, and when are we actually just on a crusade, a mission to ignorance with someone else scratching our back for us as we go?
How do we know? That's a good question. I mean, I never really had to. I guess if there's enough people in your community, like, that are, like for instance, like our Discord,
Mm.
I don't know how many, there's hundreds maybe
Like
people in
I
there.
can check right now.
Okay.
We
So
have
while you check, I'll say like there's enough people that I feel like even if there's kind of a hive mind, I don't think there's a hive mind mentality, but if there was, I think that there's enough people who bring um alternative perspectives just by just the nature of that many people. Like there's going to be alternative perspectives brought that
yeah.
would potentially disrupt any kind of like negative hive mind thought process. And I see this time and time again. I mean, following the hand channels of, like there's a number of professionals, coaches in the Discord, and they each have their own channel. They're called senseis, and people post hands, and the coach will respond, but other people pipe in too. And the policy, as far as I understand, is like anyone can say anything.
Yep.
Like it's not like you have to like flash your carrot poker degree before you can comment. And so sometimes people say things that maybe other people disagree with, or that are controversial or wrong or whatever. I mean, there's definitely some hot takes for sure, and
Yep.
that's how I personally know it's like a healthy environment, because
We don't
if there's like
cancel
one
them,
voice,
right?
yeah,
We don't cancel those people for being wrong. We
well, we
let them be
doghouse
wrong.
them.
Well, we doghouse them if they say stuff like, I was trying to protect against the
I was
Flustra.
targeting Ace King.
If they
I was
use targeting in the wrong way, yeah, we doghouse them. We give them a brown
Yeah.
name, and then their name looks like a turd, or we give them a grey name, and then their name is even worse. It blends into the background of the server, and no one can see who they are without straining. That's like the ultimate punishment. There's 530 people in the Discord right now. But yeah, what I was gonna just like, sorry to interrupt, I was just gonna make the point that
Let's
like
go.
when people are wrong, it's great that we let them be wrong in the open and we correct them in the open.
Yeah.
We don't shut down what they're saying or delete their messages. We
Right.
want you to see how people commonly go wrong. We have a big list of like dicey terms that you should be careful about using and throwing around, because we want you to use them, and we want you to get put in the doghouse and get a brown name for using the term in a bad way, in an illogical way, because not only will you see that that's like a dangerous thing to do, but everybody else will see. And shame is a hell of a teacher, let me tell you. Like being like mildly shamed in front of 530 poker players, that's quite a good teacher. That's you gotta think twice before you have that same bad thought process again. So we don't do this every time someone's wrong, but we do it sort of jovially and comedically sometimes if we think the person can take it, as a way of making a feature. Like humans, as Peterson would say, humans, we use humor, huh? Humor's our way of getting past it. Well, good for you. If you can use humor, well, good for you. That makes you strong, man. That makes you strong. And we use humor to try to get over things, right? I heard an interview he had with like some comedian that's being cancelled as like a cancellation campaign coming for this guy or whatever. And like one of the underlying themes that they both agreed on, Peterson is the clinical like psychologist, and the comedian as well. He's been in the job for like 13 years doing stand-up since he was like 14, 15. I forget the guy's name now. Maybe you remember.
I don't know. I don't remember his name, but I saw the interview.
Right.
I saw part of it.
Right. And it was kind of like, well, why do we use humor in this way? Like when something really dark happens, like why do we like to joke about that? And one of the points was, well, it shows that we've processed it enough and we're strong enough over it that we can actually make light of it. Like we don't have mastery over a troublesome event until we can make light of it. And I think it's the same in our Discord. If we can sort of give you the doghouse tag for a day and make a little joke out of the fact that you said targeting and used it in a dodgy way, well, we've been able to all laugh at that together, and we've been able to move on from it and, grow from it. And I think it's really healthy that we have that being wrong openly, and a coach coming, like someone being brave enough. This is like fantastic to me. Like someone's brave enough to come over into a hand channel that they know is run by a coach, give their opinion, and full knowledge that their opinion could be wrong, because people in the Carrot Corner Discord, they've forked out a bunch of money on tuition. These are humble people who have already accepted their rank in poker. They already know that they have loads of work to do and stuff like that. So these aren't like chat pros on the comment section telling the pro how to play a hand or anything. These are people who like know fine well they very well could be wrong, but they go into a hand channel, type their 2 cents, and then the coach comes in publicly, or one of the sort of, I'd say there's a intermediate level of player between the average member and the coach that's highly respected but isn't like a coach/sensei yet. or like one of those guys comes along and just says no, wrong, wrong, wrong in front of everyone. They know everyone's reading it, but like they grow from it. And I think that's like such a
Mm-hmm.
an amazing
Yeah.
trait. If you're able to put yourself out there like that, be a little bit embarrassed, maybe you feel a little bit of shame, but then
Yeah.
you make light of it and you laugh about it, and you then there's always a comment they make like, oh, I'll make sure to blah 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 in future, and they sort of come back and say what they've learned when they get like corrected. And I think that's such a great, powerful way of learning. So yeah, that's one way.
Yeah, it is.
Community is one way of doing that,
Yeah,
telling the
it is.
difference.
And it does take a lot of courage to be able to do that because you're vulnerable.
Mhm.
And I would say that like one of my flaws is in my like as like a poker student is that I am like I'm very resistant to that.
Mm.
So like I've posted maybe like 2 hands, I think, in the Discord since I've started a year and a half ago. And both those were it took a lot for me to do that.
Mhm.
And because I am very sensitive about these things, and I do have an ego and all of that. And I think that it's one of the big hurdles I have to learning more. And it's something I'm constantly working on and everything. I also feel like there's a portion of it where it's like, you post something and then you're like engaged with that and like checking back in on it
Yeah,
and seeing
yeah,
how the
yeah.
conversation's going. So like it takes a lot of time. And so like there's a practical side of it too that didn't always jive with, the rest of my life. And
Mm.
anyways, there's a lot of reasons for it. But there is one part of it is that I don't like to be vulnerable, and I am afraid of that public shame or whatever you want to call it.
Mhm.
But I've done it twice, and it took a lot. It took a lot, and I did it, and it was a both experiences were really helpful. And I think like I look at it like that's there's always space for me to continue to do that, and it's like it's not like anyone's sending out messages to people and being like, you haven't posted a hand, like how come you're not talking to anyone?
That
Like no one
happens to
really
me
cares.
because our
Well, for
education
you, yeah.
minister, Chris, I made the
Oh yeah,
mistake of appointing
yeah.
him Minister of Education of the Discord. I said one of your jobs
Mhm.
is to make sure the senseis answer the posts in their hand channel, and I just got tagged this afternoon like, "Hey Pete, you haven't responded. Can you please respond to this guy?" I'm like,
Good,
"God damn it, Chris, leave me
good,
alone." So yeah,
good.
I get hounded, but
uh
the students don't.
I wanted to back up a little bit because what you were saying earlier about like the hive mind,
Mm,
and it takes someone outside of the hive mind to kind of advance civilization, and use the example of like Galileo and other historical figures
mm,
like that. So I would say like maybe other players can relate to this, but I deep down I think I'm a contrarian in the sense that I'm very I'm very creative in my thought process, and I'm kind of more I'm logical, but I'm also creative, and I think those parts of my thought process are always in conflict when it comes to
mm,
poker. Um, but I'm also someone who really likes to think outside the box, and
mm.
like where some people maybe are sitting down at a live table and everyone's opening up to $15, and they think, oh, I have to open up because I don't want to be different. Like I love being the player that opens to 6,
Yep.
and everyone's like, what the fuck? And especially if they don't know
Mhm.
like I played in a game at a casino up in the state of Washington. Like this was like 6 or 7 months ago, and everyone was opening the 15. I opened the 6, and no one knew who I was, and it was like, who is this crazy woman? She doesn't
Mhm.
know anything, or she's a total fish, or she's a nit. Da,
Mhm.
da, da. I love all that. Like I'm so addicted to it, and the temptation for me is to be the contrarian. It's to be the artist in the room, and to be an artist among a room full of normies. Like that's the temptation for me, and sometimes that goes terribly wrong,
Mhm.
and I get just punished for it. But sometimes it goes right.
Mm.
And the only reason I mention this is because I'm sure there's people out there listening who have a similar thought process sometimes. Maybe there's not, but I doubt it. Where you don't like to fit in,
Mm.
and you're bored by normal players, normal thinking,
Mhm.
that you're the one that brings the color into the black and white world. And I would say like for me, that is a really fun part of poker, and sometimes it leads to like really fun results. And I find myself doing things that are maybe unusual,
Yep.
but other times like it can be disastrous. So I will say like, well, most people don't want to be outside of the hive mind. I do.
Yeah, and the tribe needs people like
for
that, right?
better or worse.
There would
Yeah,
need to be some people in a successful
yeah,
civilization who actually throw ideas out and question things, and sometimes they're wrong, and the tribe goes, okay, we've taken
yeah.
into account what you said and you're wrong, and we're going to keep doing it this way, and they say okay. Or maybe they even get like stoned to death and persecuted as being a witch or something in extreme cases,
Crucified. Yeah.
crucified, yeah. But in other cases throughout human history, these people have been super useful to a tribe, and we need people like that. Like, hold on a minute, wouldn't it be better if we did it that way? And like, you need an ideas generator, and that's what the more creative, artistic, right brain people, I think it's the right hand side of the brain that controls like that
I'm
sounds.
not sure. One or
So
the
I think
other.
it's the right brain.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so we need people like that. But in poker, yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating thing because I used to see myself in a very similar light to the way you see yourself, Melissa. Like, I used to think of myself as like a really creative logician. Like, I thought I was really logical, but I thought I was really creative as well. And I loved where those two sort of areas came together. And for me, poker was that sandbox where those things came together. Not only did I have the sand, but I had the spade as well, and I could do all these things like in that environment. And I think where I really went off the rails and lost my true self in poker, and I talk about this all the time, you guys are probably all sick of you're probably sick of hearing it, Melissa, and is that I sort of buried the creative part for a while and was just
Mm.
using the logic side and just wanted to like reduce it down to like the science of GTO for a while. And the better I came to understand GTO, the more appealing it became to just try to be like the Uber theory guy. But man, I lost sight of like so many of the cool, fun, creative things. And I lost sight of like how powerful instinct can be as well. Because I think when you're
Yeah.
functioning in a creative
Sure.
space, your instincts are ready to pick up on things at a moment's notice, right? So when I'm in a creative mode playing poker, I'll have a thought like, oh my God, I know from this guy's timing that he's going to call me on the river if I go all in here. And it's like a really strong feeling in it. It won't be like 100% read, but it'll be like a 90% read, and it'll be true most of the time. And that's the sort of thing I just lost touch with entirely. And I think it's so important that if you are a creative person, you bring that to poker. You don't try and
Mm.
suppress that and shut that off in poker. But it's also so, so important that you do learn the boundaries and you do learn what's
Mm-hmm.
permissible, because you can go so
Mm-hmm.
far off the deep end in the other direction, you know? I've had creative students do things like check raise the turn out of position with nothing against a pot sized
Mm-hmm.
bet. And it's like, for that to be
Mm-hmm.
right, for you to be able to raise 4 or 5 on king, queen, 9, 8 out of position on the turn, like, you need it to be such a ridiculously overfolded spot now because it's so much of a
Yeah.
punt in theory to do something like that. So if you know the parameters roughly, it really helps you sort of color within the lines, and like, you can still make a really nice picture by coloring within the lines, but the minute you
Yeah.
scribble all over the page, you kind of ruin the coloring in exercise that you're doing. So maybe poker is more like coloring in a really creative way and working within a certain amount of lines, or maybe sometimes going outside of the lines to draw shadows or whatever, than it is just like
Yeah.
scrawling all over the page like some modern age bullshit abstract art that sells for
Yeah.
a million and shouldn't.
I think that's totally true. And I think that one of the reasons that I think Tom Dwan was so popular in the early, whenever it was, early 2000s or whatever, when he was on High Stakes Poker, is because
Yep.
he was like the first artist like that was like truly like creative and
hmm
wild and outside of the box and made everyone look like they were in the Stone Age. All of these
hmm
Las Vegas, dinosaurs that he would play with, and he was young and he was like coming from the online world and no one knew
hmm
what that meant and all of that. It was like, and I think like that's why he will always have a kind of rock star quality to him among players of a certain generation, because he was kind of like the Dylan who went like Bob Dylan when he went electric, and
hmm
everyone was like, wait, you're supposed to play acoustic songs, like why are you plugging your guitar in,
hmm
like, and like what, and like meanwhile like he was writing like the best music, the best American music ever.
hmm
And uh it was similar in that sense. And like those figures emerge in various fields where they are they create in such a way that they are, and it's usually like it happens so fast and they can only do it when they're young. And so
hmm
like I would actually say like someone like Tom Dwan like is like, a musician who wrote like the best music of his career in his early stages, and
hmm
maybe like some of his newer albums are not as exciting.
I'm picturing Tom
But
Dwan as being like the later albums of Blink 182 or something like that. It's like, yeah, they exist, but You know, everyone
Yeah.
kind of stopped listening after that one that had feeling this
Right.
on
They
it.
don't have that same spirit that you do when you're young and crazy and all that. Anyways,
Yeah,
but
bring back fucking Cheshire Cat, man. Yeah, absolutely. The first album, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's so true. And I think like I think another thing that Dwan did, like when he first came on the scene, is that he colored really creatively and brightly, but he colored within like some fabric of the cosmos of
yeah,
poker. Like he wasn't like
yeah,
punching through the page with his
no,
crayon and ruining the picture. He was like aware of like how poker worked, and he had a relatively good understanding of the game for his time,
yeah,
and then had like a
hmm
good capacity to read what people were up to and had a bit of the Negranian quality to him as well. And then you get players who are just kind of out of control, and like they do a good thing and then they do an absolutely terrible thing, and you're like, man,
yeah,
this guy like showed so much potential, but then he just committed this egregious
yeah,
awful blunder that can just never be defensible at all. And players like that need to be they need to rein themselves in a little bit, and like finding that sweet spot, that is so hard, because the minute you fall too far in one direction, I feel like you can really fall off a cliff fast with it and
oh yeah,
lose that zen state that you need to be in to be functioning like that.
absolutely. And just like we were talking about with the Discord, like people will comment and make mistakes and give the wrong answers and they get corrected on the Discord.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, you may feel shame, you may feel embarrassment, whatever, but that's nothing compared to being corrected to the tune of 100 big blinds, or being corrected to the tune of like going broke, or watching your bankroll just disappear, or
Mm.
like light money on fire. And I will say, like, I've definitely been more in the latter category because of the nature of like how I play and how I've learned to play. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it's less now, and I'm getting better at coloring inside the lines. But that temptation is always there for me because I have that artistic impulse. And it reminds me of like, I watched a movie the other day on the painter Basquiat, who died at 23, I think. He was like this huge painter in the New York art world in the 80s, amazing painter, and like was incredibly popular, and then died from a heroin overdose at
Mm-hmm.
like 23. And then you think of like all the other musicians, Kurt Cobain, etc., that die at 26. And it's like 26 is like the magic age. I think
Mm-hmm.
it was like Janis Joplin died there, like Jim Morrison, all of like these like um rock stars die at that age, and
Mm.
they flare up and then they just fade out. And I feel like it's similar, like your example of saying like, wow, they're coloring inside the lines, and then all of a sudden they do something that's completely like, you know, way too far out.
Yep.
And if that happens again and again, yeah, it can kill you in the sense of like metaphorically killing your poker career. I mean, is this what happened to Gus Hansen? I
Mm.
mean, it's like they just like there's so many players at the club I play at, like they have a TV and it plays, for some reason it plays old WPT
Mm.
footage from WTPT tournaments, from like the early 2000s, like the poker boom years. And there's all of these players that are interviewed that are like being put up on these pedestals, like that have sponsorship
Mm-hmm.
and everything. And I'm just like, who is that person? Like, I've never heard of that person. Like they just fade out.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's so many people in like the poker graveyard of like, I mean, maybe some of them, bank a big tournament and then invest it and do something else. I'm sure that's probably some of it, but
Yep.
there's a lot of players who just like had careers and just never, you just don't ever hear from them again. Like they burn out and fade away.
Yeah, and some of them were never good, and some of them were,
Yeah.
but they did something like Stu Unger like and ended up just
Yeah,
like
exactly.
dead
Stu
in their
Unger's a great,
20s. He's the poker sort
yeah.
of equivalent, isn't he? Yeah.
Maybe he's the first artist. Maybe Stu Unger was the first
Yeah,
artist.
probably. I
I
think
don't
Stu
know.
Unger is like
Yeah.
the kind of guy that
Yeah.
you look at and you just think, oh my God, like that guy had everything that a poker player needs. He had the
Yeah.
creativity, he had the fearlessness, he had the cold logician, he had the razor sharp
Yep.
focus at the table. He had absolutely everything. And would it have been possible for Unger to be like that without being a bit of a disturbed hedonist? Like maybe not. Like maybe he had to be like the sort of guy that was going to be dead at 28 or whatever. I don't know how old he
Yeah.
was when he died, but he wasn't. I don't think he was much older than that.
No.
So yeah, these types like
Right after winning the World Series, by the way.
right.
Twice.
Yeah, I mean, World Series had like it was like a 4-man sit and go back in those days, but we'll still,
No, it
credit where
wasn't. No,
credit's
it
due.
was 90s. It was the early 90s when he won, I think, for the second time. There's video footage of it. I mean, it was like, it was the one tournament where they played outside. The final table was outside in Vegas in the
Okay.
heat. It's ridiculous. But
Okay.
anyways,
I'll
it
stop.
wasn't that long ago.
I'll stop my satire on live poker. Then it was more than 4 people at the main event that year. Well done, Stewie. But where was I going with that? But yeah, like these types, it's so typical, and I think like it's so weird. Like we were talking about this a few weeks ago. Like when I was younger, and you were saying this when you were in your 20s as well, you had more of like a risk taking, like short term focus. I think we all do when we're in our
Yeah.
20s. And I think I know more about poker now than I ever have before, and I'm thankful to say I'm getting back to playing like some of my better poker again, like in my old sort of, what do they call it, your twilight years. I feel like I'm getting back to playing some of my better poker. What's twilight years? Is
You're
that like when you're in your
no,
70s?
that's like in your 70s.
Well,
Yeah.
okay,
I
in
think
poker
you have
it's
some time.
no, poker dinosaur at 36, so 37, whatever I am now. Definitely a poker dinosaur
Yeah,
at that
maybe in the
age.
poker world, yeah, it's like dog
It's
years or
twilight
something.
years in the poker world,
Yeah.
absolutely. Um, but like when I first started out, like some of the reads I used to get, and so like I just know what people had sometimes, like playing live, and like that was such an amazingly empowering feeling. Or like even online, I
Hmm.
sometimes just knew exactly what was going on with like the timing of something, or like a read, or if it was a player I knew kind of well, I just know what they had. And I definitely played like some of my best poker in those times. Like, and it's so hard to like think back and access that now. And it's such a shame because like I don't want to go back to being that person. I don't want to go back to living that lifestyle and like being like a Kurt Cobain type or whatever that's dead at 27. But
Mm,
equally, like I think it was easier to unlock the super creative stuff back then. Like I'm
mm,
barely even creative anymore in the sense that like I'm not even musically expressive anymore. My guitar broke like a couple of years ago, and I just didn't get a new one. I haven't like played a song or written a new song on guitar for years. I used to write a song a week. I used to just be like super productive with like the guitar back in the day, and like lyrics and poetry and all that sort. I
mm,
don't do any of that shit anymore, and I think it's
mm,
hurt my poker game to some extent. But I think
mm-hmm.
it's also helped it because it's allowed me to like become a more logical, structured person at the same time. So it's just such a double-edged sword. There's just like pros and cons to each side of it, to the creative side and then to the logical side, and like trying to find that blend that someone like Stu Ungar managed to concoct is like a rare one in a million type of thing for a poker player, I think. But it is the holy grail.
Yeah, it is the Holy Grail. Yeah. And I don't think that you necessarily lose it when you get older. I think it just becomes, I don't know, it just has to be accessed in a different way. Um but yeah, I mean, I think that when I was younger, I was way too much on the artistic side. I didn't have the logic.
Yep.
I didn't have the patience. I didn't have the long-term thinking. I didn't have the ability to kind of just, you know, I guess the patience was like the biggest part for me when I was younger
Yep.
that I have now. That I think makes a big difference. So
I think you in your 20s would have been like, I don't know, when you were like describing yourself at 22 before, you think that would have been like a terrible poker player?
yes, yeah, without a doubt, without a doubt, yeah, without a doubt. And I think it would be. I was just so impulsive. I was impulsive, and I was like one big exposed nerve.
Hmm.
Like I was just like constantly. It made for a really exciting life, and uh I was very creative, and my writing was very good.
Hmm.
Um, but like you don't see a lot of writers that are like poker players, I think. Like
Hmm.
unless they're just like, I'm gonna write a poker book. But beyond that, no offense, by the way. But like you don't see like a lot of fiction writers that are poker players, I think, because like you do have to be so incredibly sensitive,
Hmm.
and um you have to be so in touch with your with the creative side of you. Like there's nothing logical about sitting down and writing
Hmm.
creatively. There's just nothing. Because first of all, like the idea of like getting published or having anyone actually read it is incredibly small.
Hmm.
Like the chance of that happening, number one. Number two is it takes a lot of time, a lot of investment.
Hmm.
So like if you're not absolutely in love with what you're doing, if you're not doing it because you have to do it, then there's no point in doing it.
Yep.
And that's um you have to access a different part of your brain as a poker player, which was always very difficult for me when I first started playing. But like I said, I've kind of balanced it out more, but I still have that. I still have those creative impulses, and sometimes I give into them, sometimes I don't.
Yeah. I wanted to write a book once, like after the Grinder's Manual. I think I was thinking about this, where like there was like a giant carrot man, like a literal carrot man, like not me, but like
Mm-hmm.
the avatars we make on the Discord and the AI generator and stuff. So like a literal guy with a carrot as a body, um, that lived in like a, I don't know, like an apartment with a bunch of other aspiring poker players, and like would arrange games and stuff, and like new people would come over and join the game sometimes, but the carrot man was always like a feature, and he was like a proper like alcoholic degenerate grumpy bastard that was always like, I don't know, like playing hands well but like telling people off, and getting wasted and just like that kind of character. And like, I don't know, at some point when I used to do a bit of writing and I used to want to do that, I thought about that was my attempt to like mentally blend that with poker
Mm,
strategy. And I just thought like, how on earth will this actually work? I never like got down and started like sat down
yeah,
to write the book because I was like, how can I actually bring the poker strategy into this in a way that won't just make it like one big regurgitated repeated exercise? Like I
right.
just, how will I build any kind of depth to the character man? How will I like be creative via the carrot man when all he's doing is like smoking a joint and telling people off for playing badly? But it would have been an interesting idea. I don't know, maybe I'll
But
do it one day when I retire, who knows.
I think there's been, I mean, I think a lot of the poker art, like Rounders, and like there's a couple other movies that have come
Hmm.
out about poker, like they all do like a really good job of like getting it right, like getting the reality of it right, like the reality of the game, the terminology, the personalities, et cetera, et cetera. But like there's never really been anything that takes like the poker mindset or like the world and translates it into like an interesting character, in my opinion. There's I think the best movie about gambling, which is not really even about gambling, but well, there's California Split, which is a really good movie from the 70s, but there's the killing of the killing of a Chinese bookie, which
Hmm.
is also from the 70s. And it's just about this guy that owns a club in LA, and he owes money to like a bunch of different bookies, and the world it creates and the sense of like existential terror
Hmm.
that he is faced with is like really good and really interesting. And that's like, it's a movie about gambling, but it's not about it's not like Rounders where they're just like talking about rolled up aces or whatever, like, or it's not like that. Like it's not meant to appeal to people. It's meant to be like, I don't know, it's meant to be like an artistic statement.
Hmm.
Anyways, I think we're maybe getting off topic a little bit
Yeah,
in the sense
but I
that we
mean,
had one.
loads of cool stuff covered. I think community at
Yeah.
the end of the day is just massively important, and to
Yeah.
combat the loneliness of poker, you've maybe like creativity as a way of doing it as well. If you always keep it fresh and you keep it new to yourself and you stay energized, you look for cool exploits and you try and hand read and all of that, and you come up with new ideas for lines that you can use to exploit people. Poker will be a hell of a lot more fun. And if you do that with other people, I think you'll multiply it even more. Like avoid the me and my GTO wizard,
Yeah.
supervisor mentality. You won't be a poker player that way. You'll just be looking at charts and thinking you're copying them and failing to copy them, and getting bad feedback that's losing touch with reality, not being able to hand read. And that's how you're going to feel a lot lonelier a lot quicker. So community is great, but if you don't have access to a place like our Discord group and you're not ready to make that kind of investment into your game, try and find friends and similarly minded people that are at a similar level to you, and do like jump on calls with them and do sweats. And that's what we did back in the day. You jump on a call with another player that you thought was decent enough, and you just played and you just talked about it together for an hour. It's just called doing a sweat. I don't think it happens very much these days, but sweating was just a super common part of the what it was to be a grinder back in the day. And I think it's a bit of a lost art, and that's a bit sad. But that's one final idea that we could maybe bring back the notion of a sweat if you have some poker friends and play with them watching.
Yep. Yep. All
Okay.
right. Well, thanks everyone for listening. We really appreciate if you like and subscribe, leave us comments. I've already said in the past how much I love the comments, but I do.
Give
So
Melissa compliments.
yeah. And yeah, I hope people that are listening can connect with what we're talking about today. I know that I'm sure there's players out there that are like me. And yeah, I hope that it was useful.
Yep, absolutely. All right, guys, we'll see you next time on Poker Distilled. Bye bye.
Bye.